SJ, welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar.
Or undue influence, harassment, censorship, control, or restrictions from any department of the government of the Mvskoke Creek Nation in order to provide unbiased news and reports objectively to the Mvskoke Creek citizens. For the purpose of this legislation, independent press is meant to include all editorial outlets, television, radio, and creative. The independent press shall be governed by an independent editorial board. The editorial board alone shall have power to hire a director. The director shall oversee Mvskoke media personnel, including hiring staff and funding. The Mvskoke Creek Nation shall fund day-to-day operations and the publication of the independent press.
Okay, excuse me here. Now, since this is such an important topic, I guess at this point we would invite listeners to call in if you've got a thought to share on the issue of freedom of the press constitutional amendment. Please give us a call at 918-756-3646. And we ask you to be polite, stick to the subject, and let us know what's on your mind. So, again, 918-756-3646. Now, the idea of entering this this proposal into a tribal constitution sounds kind of scary. Now, were you having any thoughts like possible consequences or how it might be received?
I guess I'm always concerned about when I introduce a bill or sponsor a bill, how it's going to be received. And I think with the past history of freedom of press, we went through a lot of things, and hopefully we learned from that. And because of last year in June, for the full council to unanimously support freedom of press and the independent status of the Mvskoke media, I felt like, we're all on the same page. This is a natural step. And just to avoid any mistakes that we have made in the past, I guess for my future thinking was if we can just get this as a constitutional right, it will be protected for future generations. Whoever comes in and fills our shoes are going to be able to keep the citizens informed in this very responsible, unrestricted manner, and they'll be able to enjoy the rights of freedom of press.
The right is the thing that impresses me the most. It's like you got right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness kind of thing. And personally, to oppose it is old-time thinking that I believe has really been changing and as Native America has evolved. Something like this was well in place and well to be accepted in governing what the tribal media did. It was, fact of life at one point. And I think I heard it, a comment during a tribal dispute over elections and things like that here in the state. And the comment was, that's your newspaper. You tell them what to do with it. And it was a tribal chairman candidate's assistant used those words. And I'm thinking, nobody should ever own a paper like that. I mean, if we don't have the freedom to discuss and present the facts as we can find them, then all of our efforts are no more than a community billboard.
Sure.
And, which is okay, that's actually, something we do need to spread out the other information about our tribe and people, but to not go beyond that, I think is a waste of time and money and effort. Any tribe that has limited its media to merely that can get lots of coverage of the pancake dinners and, somebody's kid graduating from some school, or which is okay, which is what we do, and we think that's important. But to limit it only to that is something that people have advocated for, and things like this. Now, where does that sit with you? I mean, how do you react to hearing something like that?
Well, what it reminds me of right off is I read somewhere, whoever controls the media controls the people's thinking. And I see now that, especially with people relying so heavily on social media, and I think with social media, of course, a lot of stuff is not factual. There is a lot of bias, and all the things that go on, and you really don't know what is fake news. I think that makes it even more important for like the Mvskoke Media, a paper that keeps the Mvskoke citizens informed. It makes it even more important for them to be able to report the news in an unrestricted way, unbiased, uncensored, all those things. Because now we're competing against the social media, what's being said out there, and that's what people are really following and looking at. So they're getting this information and they're thinking it's the gospel. They see it on Facebook and they say, oh my goodness, I can't believe these people did that. But if we have something over here, it's kind of like checks and balances. If the Mvskoke media is able to say, okay, here's the facts. This is what happened. And, that's why I think it's so important. It's to keep us informed, and it's to keep us informed in a way that we can trust the news. And I think for myself, I look at social media and I know there's a lot of positive ways we can use social media, but I also know that it can be used to really damage communities, nations, citizens. So that's what came to my mind.
Right, we're seeing so many examples of that. People putting out pure road apples that and they're trying to pass off as news. Now, we really never listened or heard this phrase "fake news" until the presidential campaign of former President Trump. And it's like, don't believe what is being said, trust that the messenger is lying to you. It's like, my God, man, I've been in this business for like 35 years, 40 years, and that's never been the case with anyone I've ever worked with, except you see examples pop up here, in particularly the national media, when this phrase was discussed, and all of a sudden a lot of big-name journalists were admitting that they had kind of fabricated a bit of their story. Like a guy said, our helicopter got shot down by an RPG. And later on, the Army says, "Wait a minute, we flew that mission and nobody got shot down." Oh well, I guess I misspoke. And you think, how can people do that? I mean, you heard the big lie, I guess, under Adolf Hitler, and I'm not making any comparisons, and nobody get their fur rubbed the wrong way here, but. If you're going to tell a lie, tell a big one, and I think that's kind of what was going on. Let's see if we can get a caller here. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Well, we're trying to struggle along and do a show here. You going to share some thoughts there? Well, no more than we probably are already. But yeah, I understand the control thing, and if you're going to do something like that, worldwide virus is certainly a method that has proved itself effective. Now, what about the thoughts on freedom of the press for the Mvskoke people? Have you ever thought about that and got into that? Okay, well, let's hope they're listening, and we'll encourage them to call in and share their opinions. Okay, any final thoughts here? Boy, yeah, that's an old story. Oh, thank you for calling in. We appreciate it, Mado. Okay, that was one of our regular listeners to KO, 1240 The Brew. And I'm glad he called in and shared his opinion, although the medical end of it was a little bit out of the line we're doing. Now, Mark, he did raise an interesting point, and I think we've covered it already, that you control the media, and you tell them what you want, and that's all they get, and that's what they believe. So, like, how do you react to something like that?
With this bill, I think the legislation is really about getting the question on the ballot and giving the citizens the right to decide. If we represent the voice of the people as national council members, I myself would love to leave it to the citizens. So the decision will be representative of the Mvskoke people, not the administration or the national council. I believe this is something that the people have to want for themselves and to understand the importance behind it. I think with all these other things going on in the world, and of course coming out of this pandemic and all that, I didn't want to lose sight of the importance of freedom of press and getting it as a constitutional right and getting it protected. One of the things that is a good time right now also is with the election coming up for seat B. This will be no added cost to the nation. I spoke with the representative from the election board, and he said there's no problem as long as we get all the information in by July. There's no added cost, so it's a good time to entertain this again and hopefully get it set in concrete. That way we won't have to worry about it anymore. We can go on and we can get out there and try and tackle some different issues.
Right. It's not like we haven't got a whole lot of other things to do, too.
Yes, sir.
One of the points that we've often heard, and people kind of beat us over the head with it, is, like, we fund you, we should tell you what to do, kind of basically is what it comes down to. And I'm interested in what your thoughts on when people make that kind of argument.
Anytime they talk about the funding, I think, and this is just my opinion, is I believe the Mvskoke media, it wasn't designed to ever be financially independent. I believe it was designed to keep the citizens informed. It's a service to the nation. It does a job just like other departments. And I think I kind of alluded to it earlier. There are other entities within the nation that have an independent status, but never do I hear anyone really talk about, well, they need to become financially independent, other than the Mvskoke media.
Mm-hmm. The issue, it can seem like it would be a hot one. Is it like the subject of a lot of debate when it's discussed in council or committee?
I think because we've discussed it so many times.
Yeah, what, 3 or 4 times now?
Yeah, and it's been on the table many a times, and I really, I got a good feeling that as a council, we see the importance. And so, like even in committee, there wasn't anything really to say at this point. We know what freedom of press is. And now it just boils down to whether the council is going to say, okay, let's get it on the ballot. Let's let the people make the ultimate decision. And I even had some people approach me about saying we needed a constitutional convention. And I thought, if we can't even get in a constitutional amendment, on the ballot, I don't know where we stand with the constitutional convention.
That scares me. In fact, of trying to put something like that together and then control the activity, not really control, but make sure the activity happens in an intelligent fashion.
Sure.
Nobody gets a hold of it. Are there things that you might fear if such an amendment was not approved?
No, I'm really coming at this as an optimist because I consider myself an optimist, and I have the greatest hopes that it will pass through. If it doesn't, I think it's a shame. I don't know why anyone on council wouldn't want the citizens to have the right to make the decision. I think it's coming more and more, and we see more citizens getting involved and wanting to have their input and their say, and I think we should start entertaining that. Mm-hmm. I think maybe in the past it's been in the hands of just a few people, but if we're really going to be a nation that represents our people, I think we've got to be agents of positive change and start doing some things differently.
Okay. We're going to take a short pause here, and we'll be back with more Mvskoke Radio, so please stay with us.
Hurry out to the BOK Center this Saturday night for all the hockey action when the Tulsa Oilers take on the Kansas City Mavericks on Alzheimer's Awareness Night. The puck drops at 7:05 p.m. Buy tickets today by phone or text at 918-632-7825. That's 918-632-7825 or online at TulsaOilersHockey.com. Tulsa Oilers hockey fun for the entire family. That's Tulsa Oilers hockey this Saturday night at the BOK Center.
Okay, we're back into free fall here. The chance to offer this proposal before the voters has got to leap a couple of hurdles here. First of all, it has to be entered and discussed and voted on, I guess, in council. Is that right? First.
Yes.
And then it gets put on the ballot for the upcoming elections this fall.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's not a done deal by this vote or this activity in council, right?
It shows in the legislation how it'll be on the ballot, how it's worded and everything, and the citizens will just be able to check yes or no, whether they support it or not. And I think it's important that when it makes it to the ballot, that it's done in a way that's very clear, and that people understand. I understand that before there's been some questions on our ballots, and they were very confusing. And so I'm thankful for this time on the air to be able to try and explain the best I can, what really this is all about. Because I think education and communication is key when it comes to presenting anything. And I think sometimes we lack in communication, and I think sometimes we lack in education because we just assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. And so I think for the last, I don't know how long we've been, freedom of the press has been in the spotlight. It's been discussed many times, and I think people know what we're looking at. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it'll make it to the ballot. We'll be able to vote on it, and, it might get in the Constitution. That might be protected. Or, the flip side of it is if we don't have this protection, if we don't have this constitutional right, it can always be changed within one day. Someone could come in, we could have a new administration come in and say, we don't care for that. We want to control the paper and get it repealed. We could have a majority of the council decide we want it repealed tomorrow, and they could go back and we could repeal this bill, and everything we worked for will go back to the very start. It won't be
It seems like that was a situation a couple of times before. Once initially brought up, and people said, "Oh yeah, it's wave the flag, and it's freedom, and we got to inform our people." But it got voted down. I believe the second time it came up, it went through the same process and actually gained approval in council, but then was vetoed by the chief at the time, saying, "Wait a minute here, we don't know that you guys need to be controlling any money or commercial activity with a Mvskoke creative element here that's associated with us. The people who do the banners and the programs for funerals and weddings and things like that, and then stickers and things like that." Said, we need to take that away and put it under commerce, since it's a money-making situation. And we, of course, kind of objected because, we'd worked very closely with our people in providing some guidance in what needs to be done and what perhaps should be discussed again before production. And we were kind of astounded, saying, wait a minute here, and you guys are starting to count pennies, and we're not making that many pennies. And anyway, that veto stood, and so we were placed under commerce, and I think a gentle hand from those people, understood they were being handed this hot potato, and tried to let us do our job without any interference that I know of. But there were a couple of instances where comments and material facts and things were held up. And we managed to survive that. And at one point, I think when this idea was voted down first time, our staff got together, our editorial people, and we were all sitting around in the lobby wondering what was next. And we were thinking, okay, when does Light Horse show us up and escort us out the door? And, one of our staff members at the time, she called us the Magnificent Seven, saying, "You guys going to go down fighting?" I said, "Well, yeah. Hopefully our guns will still be loaded." But it got to that point where we were all just wondering what's next. And of course, among us, this is your profession. This is the way you pay your money, your mortgage, your rent, you feed your kids, and whatever else. And had people saying, "Well, I can't, deal with this anymore," and some of them left, which put us in a hard spot, but we managed to get through it. Now, I know that my colleagues would hate to see us ever put in that position again. Now, if we were to see a failure of this proposal and the thing remaining on the books as it is, so to speak, do you see any danger or any problem with someone wanting to come in and control and using our lack of that particular shield? You see us being, censored again? I'm asking for speculation now.
Okay, yeah, and I'll be totally honest. And I do a lot of reading. I follow a lot of different tribal nations, and one of the things I'm realizing more and more is that we are a fierce political people. And I think when debates come and misunderstandings or arguments, whatever it is, I've seen people go to some extremes to get their point across, to control, whatever the situation is, or to, in their mind, win. And I hate to say it, but I've worked in other places in professional settings, and some of the things I've seen here at Creek Nation, there seems to be there's not always a lot of boundaries. And I think, to me, in my mind and my thinking, that if this isn't put in concrete, if this isn't put in place for our future generations, it'll happen again. Somebody will come in and they won't agree, and the paper might report something they don't like, and guess what? They're going to put a gag on it. They're going to put a rope around them and say, you know what, be quiet.
Oh, gosh.
You know, that's just my thinking. I mean, like I say, I am an optimist, but I also believe I'm a realist also.
Yeah. Well, we've seen, of course, as I said earlier, we've seen it happen in other tribes. But I think we're in an era of progress where people are becoming more involved in various things and expressing those opinions. And for us to be effective, our forum still has to remain open. I mean, if somebody wanted to shut it down, then they're doing a huge disservice to our citizens.
Sure.
And that's not where we want to go. That's not what we want to see. As reporters, we try to do our jobs in the most professional manner and gather the facts. And if there's something missing, then that's what we report, saying, well, this source, refused comment or had nothing to say, and we've had administrative and council people and come in and air talk and do this sort of thing to us, and it throws a real damper on tribal employees then. Like when we're doing something fairly simple, like a story on housing or cultural activities even. They're saying, well, let me talk to my boss first. And we have had, even recently I made a request to a department and they said, well, they don't want me to talk, but they wanted their boss to talk, their departmental head. And so far they haven't talked. And it's an important issue. We'll hopefully try and get to that in the future. Okay, now, do you see any, let's call them icebergs in our course here? Are we headed for a collision with anything there, or is it just a matter of this particular question right now?
I believe it's just a matter of this question and for the council to understand really what this legislation is about. We've already put our vote in that we support freedom of the press. We already voted back in June of 2020 unanimously that we supported independent status for Mvskoke Media. This is about getting it on the ballot and for the citizens to vote on it for a constitutional amendment. That's what it's about. I hope we don't go backwards and start, thinking about all the things. I know that always comes into play. There's a history here of the freedom of the press. I'm looking for some smooth sailing. I'm hoping for smooth sailing. And if there's any icebergs, hope we get some global warming or whatever. And they,
chop them up for iced tea.
Yeah.
Okay, now the question will be coming up this weekend. Is this correct?
On Saturday.
All right, and that meeting begins at 10.
Yes, sir.
And is that a regular council meeting where all citizens are open to come in?
I don't know if they've opened the council meetings yet. And I don't even really know about the offices. I heard they were going to, but I think it'll be live streamed. That's all I know for sure.
Right.
And I hope the live stream works.
Well, I believe we're asking permission also for Mvskoke Radio to come in and plug in and record that session, and then we'll have it built for a later program.
Right.
With these kinds of things happening, I mean, our media is now at a point where they can put stuff out there live on whatever social media is available. We can record it for use on this program, and of course we'll have reporters there for the newspaper. Now, is this the kind of situation that you would envision as being what we're after?
Sure. I think one of the big things is, and it's a word that's so widely used, is transparency. And I think transparency can be offered, you can frame it many times over. And whether you're going live or however you're doing it in the media, I think it's just being able to record live. I mean, that's transparency at its finest. And so really a lot of this bill too is just saying for the people, everyone keeps saying they want transparency. The people that are getting elected said they're going to provide transparency. This word keeps coming up, transparency, transparency. So if y'all can do your job in a very transparent way, and I think if the rest of us do our jobs in a very transparent way, everything will be fine. There wouldn't be nothing to worry about. I don't think this would be such a big question or debate.
Well, I'm hoping so. And if people take issue with something, then let's hope they focus on the message and not the messenger.
Mm-hmm.
We've been griped at enough from different people. Now, as we look to the future, again, I'm asking you to speculate, do you think this will have some real effect on the way tribal business gets conducted, both administratively and legislatively and through the judicial branch? Do you think, what kind of change might you envision?
That's an interesting question. As far as, there again, I go back to transparency. I think, last year in June when the Freedom of the Press bill went through, we also had the Freedom of Information Act go through. And we see that coming into play now, but, we have to look at how is our nation adhering to this new Freedom of Information Act. Are they following it? Are they bucking the system? Is it as easy as it sounds like in the legislation? And I think it's the same way with freedom of press. We can ideally say we have freedom of press. There's a freedom there to report anything you want. But there's all kinds of ways to retaliate. I think there's different forms. And I think one of the things as Native peoples, we're very skilled at the silent art of communication, and you can retaliate with your eyeballs. You know what I mean? If you want to,
Oh, yeah.
And so there's just different ways. And my hope would be, with your question, is it holds us, it raises the bar on accountability. Mm-hmm. And when we're dealing with the people's money, this money here belongs to the Mvskoke people. When we're dealing with it, we have to be accountable. It should be transparent. It should be like walking up to the water and you look down and you can see everything. You can see all the way to the bottom. You can see what all's going on in there in the water. And I think this is like a goal of ours to have, because in the past, too many things were done, parking lot conversations behind closed doors, and the people were never informed. They didn't know what was going on. And we'll never really know all the things that really happened in the past. And so when we look to the future, we've got to change that.
The phrase closed executive session has come up for us many, many times, and we weren't allowed to get into a meeting and listen and record or whatever we had to do. Mm-hmm. And just being, as I say, the nosy reporter I am, it really raised my eyebrows saying, well, first question you ask is, what are they hiding? Mm-hmm. Do you think this closed executive session is an effective way to do things, or should some of those questions be put before the public?
For me, and there's times when they vote for executive session, I'll vote no. And I believe, and I've said it among my own colleagues, that there's times I believe we hide behind it. And it is a way of hiding things. Mm-hmm. I believe that's a fact. I mean, it's in some instances we might be in litigation with someone. There's some things that are confidential, mm-hmm. That I think have to be kept confidential. But there's other things I believe could be said out in the open, and we could be a lot more transparent once again.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's something that I agree with you right there. I mean, we think it's important enough for us to have access to those sessions to to do our jobs. And then sometimes, I guess personally, we might react saying, well, you know, as I said earlier, what are they hiding? And that may not be the case. Mm-hmm. As you said, you know, stuff like, you know, sometimes negotiations with our wonderful state governor or mm-hmm. even the feds, or issues of money and budget. Mm-hmm. You know, those actually do have hearings and they're out there for people to check out. But sometimes it gets a little tighter where they'll close the session and saying, well, maybe we don't want this discussed. Mm-hmm. Are your colleagues really satisfied with that? I mean, you know, just from your position, or is it something they find disagreeable, perhaps?
Well, you know, I really can't speak for my colleagues. I can just speak for myself and saying, you know, what I just got through saying that mm-hmm. sometimes, you know, we need it and sometimes I don't think we need it. I mean, that's just my feeling. I can't speak for my colleagues. I don't remember us ever really discussing it that mm-hmm. much, you know. Mm-hmm. I think it's something that's in place that they've used for years, you know. Well, let's just go into executive session. Let's go in, you know. And I think, you know, you'd probably have to ask them because I can't talk for them.
Well, now, yeah, I guess I'm a little scarred or weathered because, you know, I spent a number of years in Washington, D.C. watching the national government. Oh. On Capitol Hill and, of course, a little bit into the White House when they had something to do with natives. And I think of a movie, what is it, Charlie Wilson's War, where they're making these deals in the hallway, saying, mm-hmm. you do this, I'll do that. Mm-hmm. And I'll trade you this for that, and we need so much money. And I'm just kind of envisioning an atmosphere like that going on here in our council. But I would presume that to be the case in some cases, but not all the time, right? Were people cutting deals a lot? Did you see that?
I wouldn't say cutting deals. I think what I've seen as far as legislation goes, you know, that's out in the open. But I think there's some times when things might go awry or people we've entered into business with, partnerships or whatever, it doesn't work out the way they said it was going to work out. Mm-hmm. We have people that come to us and present these portfolios and these great ideals and theories, you know, and we can do all these things and they're bulletproof, you know, they're guaranteed 100%. It sounds so good and looks so good on paper, but once it starts, there's times we get burned. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, and I think a lot of times maybe that's more or less sometimes I don't know if it's a fear or guilt or what it is, but for myself, I believe that the citizens should know about all the business ventures, mm-hmm. where exactly we stand with everything. And even my hopes is, and I've heard about a tribal nation where they're fixing it where their citizens can come in and actually get on the computer and look at their what goes on daily with their finances. Right. You know, and so to me, I would like to see us move in a way to where if we were totally transparent, we wouldn't have nothing to worry about. That's what I think. You know.
Yeah, you know, my feeling on it was, if it is transparent, if it is available, if people can see it for themselves, then perhaps some of the situations may not develop. Sure. Bad things won't happen if people know you're looking at them, kind sure. of thing. Well, I tell you what, we've got a couple of minutes here. First, is there something else, a point you'd like to make that we haven't touched on? I know we've hit several points several times, but something you might want to add or close with.
You know, I think we covered it pretty well. The only thing I just want to reiterate is this legislation is really about getting the question on the ballot and giving the citizens the right to decide. If we as a council represent the voice of the people, I myself would love to leave it to the citizens so the decision will be representative of the Mvskoke people not the administration or the National Council. So citizens, please call your legislators. If you'd like to see this put in place, let them know how you feel. That's all I got to add, Mr. Fife. I've run out of air.
So as I was floundering for questions. Now, and we're wrapping up here. If people are interested, can you give them a bill title when it will be entered and the logistical part of it there?
The bill number is NCA 21-053. It's a law of the Mvskoke Creek Nation to amend the Constitution of the Mvskoke Creek Nation to add Article 14, Independent Free Press.
Okay, everybody get that down? Yeah. Well, now, this will be an open council session. We haven't determined that yet, have we?
No, sir.
Okay. So my indications are that it will be somewhat closed, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as he said, let your legislator know how you feel about the situation. Okay, where am I here? Get caught up in something here and forget about the important stuff we got to do. First of all, volunteers are needed for the Pecan Festival, June 10th through the 12th. There's a call out for people to come help in all of the various activities, including in a festival, including rides and ticket taking, that sort of thing. June 10th to 12th down here. And to sign up and volunteer, you want to contact Patricia Killian, 918-732-7919. And, here's an important part. Volunteers are required to purchase a $5 volunteer shirt. Usually they give those things away, don't they? But anyway, that's June 10th to the 12th, Pecan Festival here in Omolgi. And call for submissions. This weekend is it. If you haven't got your student graduate profile submitted, this is closing on May the 14th. That's Friday at 5 p.m. is the deadline for that special June 1st print edition. That's our annual graduate edition. So you got to get it in by the 14th at 5 p.m. And sorry, no late profiles will be accepted. Okay, well, I think that does it. I'm going to say Mado Mabu Hedges Scott, and we're out of here. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.